I grip my coffee cup tighter, my knuckles turning white as Rebecca's words hang in the air between us like a toxic cloud. "So next month I'll be moving into your apartment," she announces with that casual smile of hers, as if she's just told me she's switching to oat milk or taking up yoga classes. Just until I get back on my feet, you know? But before I tell you how this moment changed everything, I'm curious. Where are you right now as you hear my story? Are you listening during your commute, taking a break from work, or maybe settling in for the evening? If stories like mine, about real people facing impossible family situations, speak to you, please like and subscribe for more of these everyday tales that might help you navigate your own challenges. The champagne bottle pops open beside me, and my father Michael beams as he pours the golden liquid into crystal glasses I've never seen before. My mother's best dinnerware, the set she only brings out for Christmas and Easter, gleams under the pendant lights of our family dining room. The formal table setting should have been my first warning sign. Something important was happening here. Rebecca positioned at the head of the table like some honored guest, the expensive wine chilling in the ice bucket. This wasn't our usual Sunday family dinner. This was a carefully orchestrated ambush. "I've already started looking at storage units," Rebecca continues, accepting a champagne flute from Dad with that gracious nod she's perfected over the years. "It shouldn't take more than a weekend to get everything moved over to your place, Lily." My parents exchange those pleased glances across the table, nodding along as if this is the most reasonable plan in the world, as if my consent is merely a formality they've already assumed. "Here's to new beginnings and family helping family," my father announces, raising his glass with that proud smile that used to make me feel special. Everyone lifts their glasses in response. Everyone except me. The storage unit conversation makes perfect sense now. 2 weeks ago, I discovered several large boxes stacked in my parents' garage, clearly labeled Rebecca's winter clothes and Rebecca's kitchen items in my mother's neat handwriting. When I'd asked Rebecca about them during our coffee date, she'd brushed it off with a wave of her hand. "Just temporary storage while I reorganize my place," she'd said, stirring her latte with that innocent expression she'd mastered in childhood. "You know how small my studio apartment is." I should have known then. Just like I should have recognized the warning signs when I'd confronted my parents about covering Rebecca's rent for the 4th time this year. Each time it was always, "Just this once," or "just until she gets back on track." "Rebecca's going through a rough patch," Mom had explained, dismissing my concerns with that patient tone she used when she thought I was being unreasonable. "That's what families do, Lily. We support each other through difficult times." I can still hear my mother's voice from last weekend, the phone conversation I wasn't supposed to overhear while I waited in their kitchen. "Lily gets so lonely in that big apartment all by herself," she told my Aunt Patricia, her voice carrying that false concern that made my skin crawl. "She really needs her sister's company. It's perfect timing, really. Everyone benefits from this arrangement." As if my entire life exists solely to accommodate Rebecca's latest financial crisis. As if my hard-earned independence and carefully maintained space are just resources waiting to be redistributed to my sister whenever she needs them. I set my coffee cup down carefully, my hand trembling slightly, not from nervousness, but from pure, undiluted rage. I reached for my purse on the floor beside my chair, my fingers closing around the manila envelope I'd brought tonight. The envelope I'd almost left in my car, thinking tonight wasn't the right time for what I had to say. But with my family, there's never a right time. There's only their time, their plans, their expectations, and everyone else's job is to fall in line. "Why do you look so serious, Lily?" Rebecca laughs, though her eyes dart nervously toward our parents. "This is great news for both of us. You get some company in that huge apartment, and I get to save money on rent while I figure out my next career move. It's a win-win situation." My fingers steady as I place the manila envelope on the table in front of me. The tremor in my hands disappears, replaced by a calm determination I haven't felt in years. "Actually," I say, my voice much calmer than I feel inside, "I have some news too." The change in the room's atmosphere is immediate and unmistakable. My parents' expressions shift like storm clouds gathering on a clear day. My mother's smile falters, her eyes narrowing with that dangerous glint I remember from my teenage years. My father slowly lowers his champagne glass, his forehead creasing with concern and something that looks suspiciously like warning. I can feel the familiar weight of their disapproval settling over me like a heavy blanket. The unspoken labels hover in the air between us: selfish, difficult, ungrateful. The consequences of defying their plan are crystal clear. Disagree with this arrangement, and I become the family villain once again. The troublemaker who can't just go along with what's best for everyone. Looking at their expectant faces that have shaped my entire life through their approval and disapproval, I realize this pattern has defined every major decision I've ever made. Rebecca takes, I give. My parents orchestrate the transaction and enforce compliance. The roles never change, the script never varies, the outcome is always the same. Until tonight. I place my hand on the manila envelope, feeling the weight of the documents inside. What I have to tell you, I begin, is going to change everything. The silence that follows is deafening. I carefully withdraw the papers from the manila envelope, my hands steady now despite the thundering of my heart. This, I say, placing the documents on the table where everyone can see them, is the lease termination agreement for my apartment. I signed it yesterday. I have 30 days before I move out. The champagne glass slips from Rebecca's fingers, shattering against my parents' hardwood floor. The sound echoes through the dining room, but nobody moves to clean it up. My father's mouth opens and closes like he's trying to speak underwater. You what? Rebecca finally whispers, her voice barely audible. I pull out my phone, scrolling to the Pinterest board I discovered this morning. Interesting timing, isn't it? While you were planning to move in with me, Mom and Aunt Patricia were already busy designing your new bedroom setup in my apartment. I turn the screen toward them, showing their carefully curated board titled, Rebecca's New Space, Lily's Place. The recognition that flashes across their faces tells me everything I need to know. For 3 years I've been working double shifts at the marketing firm, picking up freelance projects on weekends, skipping vacations and new clothes, all to afford that downtown apartment with the brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows. My dream space in the arts district. And to them, it was just another resource to be reallocated to Rebecca whenever she needed it. My father stands abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Lily, you can't just break a lease like that, he says, his voice carrying that dismissive tone I know so well. There are penalties, legal consequences. You can call your landlord tomorrow and explain that you made a mistake. My mother rises too, placing her hand on Dad's arm in that united front gesture they've perfected over the years. Sweetheart, she says, her voice taking on that concerned, therapeutic tone she uses when she thinks someone is having a breakdown. We already told Rebecca she could stay with you for as long as she needs. You can't possibly expect her to find a place in just 30 days. The rental market is impossible right now. Actually, Aunt Patricia chimes in from her seat at the far end of the table. We were planning to help move most of her things this Thursday while you were at work. We thought it would be easier for everyone if we just handled the logistics ourselves. The casual admission of their coordinated betrayal hits me like a physical blow. I look around the table at these people who claim to love me, who've been planning to invade my personal space without even consulting me. My sanctuary, the place I go to recharge from dealing with them, was going to be occupied by the very person I need breaks from. You can't do this, my father continues, his voice getting harder. What about the security deposit you'll lose? What about your credit score? You know I help you with that annual renter's insurance payment. That assistance comes with expectations, Lily. The implied threat hangs in the air like smoke. His one yearly contribution to my finances, dangled now as leverage to control my decision. It's so typical of him to frame his minimal help as grounds for major life decisions. Michael, my mother says softly, using that voice she employs when discussing people who might be having mental health episodes. I'm genuinely worried about Lily. This kind of impulsive, destructive decision-making isn't like her at all. Maybe we should ask Dr. Rodriguez about getting her an evaluation. Sudden personality changes can indicate underlying issues. I recognize the strategy immediately. When family members won't comply, question their mental stability. It's a well-worn path in our family dynamics, one that's kept me in line for years through the fear of being labeled unstable or difficult. You did this on purpose, Rebecca accuses, tears now streaming down her cheeks. You found out I needed somewhere to stay, and you terminated your lease just to hurt me. You've always been jealous that Mom and Dad care about my well-being. The accusation lands exactly where she intended it to. This is how it always works in our family. My boundaries get reframed as cruelty, my self-preservation painted as jealousy and spite. For a moment, I consider explaining the real reasons. The rent increase that pushed my housing costs to 60% of my income. The building's new management company that's been finding reasons to evict long-term tenants. The mold problem in my bathroom that they refused to address, triggering my asthma attacks. The truth is that leaving wasn't entirely my choice. It was financial necessity dressed up as a decision. But what would be the point of explaining? They've already written the narrative where I'm the villain who's abandoning her family out of selfishness. Why give them more details to twist against me? I made this decision for my own reasons. I say instead, keeping my voice level. And it's final. So you're just gonna leave your sister homeless? My mother's voice rises, that familiar guilt-inducing tone creeping in. After everything we've done for you over the years? After all the times we've been there when you needed us? The weight of their so-called sacrifices settles on my shoulders like it always does. The invisible ledger of family obligations that somehow only ever seems to add up debt in my column. But as I sit there, I find myself mentally reviewing their sacrifices with new clarity. The times they were there for me usually involved them telling me what I should do differently. Their help typically came with conditions and expectations that benefited them more than me. Even their emotional support was often conditional on my compliance with their wishes. Rebecca isn't homeless, I point out, my voice steady despite the emotional storm around me. She has her studio apartment. And if that doesn't work out, she has your guest room upstairs. That's not the point, my father interjects sharply. Family helps family, period. That's how we've always operated, and that's how we're going to continue operating. The unspoken remainder of that sentence echoes in my head. And you're not being family right now. I gather the lease termination papers back into my envelope, feeling oddly calm despite the chaos I've unleashed. I think, I say carefully, that we have very different definitions of what helping family actually means. Under the table, I feel a gentle squeeze on my hand. Dorothy, Mom's longtime friend who's been quietly observing this whole scene, leans over and whispers so softly I almost miss it. Good for you, honey. It's a small moment of validation, but in this room full of accusations and guilt trips, it feels monumental. At least one person here doesn't see me as selfish or cruel for protecting my own well-being. As I sit surrounded by my family's outrage and Rebecca's tears, I wonder if I should explain the financial realities that forced this decision, or if holding firm without justification is the stronger choice. Would showing my vulnerability help them understand, or would it just give them new ammunition to use against me? The answer comes to me as I look around the table at their faces, already convinced of my guilt. It doesn't matter what I say or don't say. They've made up their minds about who I am in this story. For the first time in my life, I'm okay with being their villain if it means being my own hero. The first call comes Tuesday morning while I'm making breakfast. Aunt Patricia's name flashes on my phone screen, which is unusual for a weekday before 9. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something tells me I should answer. Lily, sweetheart. Her voice carries that particular tone reserved for family emergencies and major gossip. I just got off the phone with your mother. Is it true you terminated your lease just to prevent Rebecca from staying with you? My coffee mug slips from my hand, hot liquid splashing across my kitchen counter. What? That's not what happened at all. Rebecca called me crying last night. Aunt Patricia continues, her voice heavy with disappointment. She said you deliberately broke your lease knowing she needed somewhere to stay, that you'd rather pay penalties and damage your credit than help your own sister. The heat from the spilled coffee fades as a different kind of burning rises in my chest. Aunt Patricia, that's not. Your sister's going to be homeless, Lily. I never thought you could be so vindictive. The calls continue throughout the day. Uncle Robert during my lunch break. My cousin Jennifer right after work. Even my father's poker buddy Frank, whose connection to this situation I can't begin to fathom. Each conversation follows the same script. Rebecca's desperate circumstances, my apparent heartlessness, their profound disappointment in me. Each caller seems to have received the same briefing. I'm the cruel sister who chose spite over family loyalty. Rebecca is the innocent victim of my selfish decision-making. The narrative has been crafted and distributed with military precision. By evening, I make the mistake of checking Instagram. Rebecca's latest post sits at the top of my feed. A black and white photo of her looking pensively out a window. The caption reads, "Learning that some people will choose their own convenience over family bonds, even when it means leaving those they claim to love in impossible situations. Sometimes the people closest to us show their true colors when we need them most. #family, #disappointed, #alone." 43 sympathetic comments follow, including one from Mom. "We love you no matter what, sweetheart. Family always comes first in this house." Another from Dad. "Our door is always open to you, princess." I stare at my phone, watching the likes accumulate on Rebecca's post. Friends from high school, distant relatives, even some of my own coworkers are responding with heart emojis and supportive messages. The narrative has spread beyond our immediate family circle. The knife I'm using to chop vegetables for dinner moves with increasing force against the cutting board. Each chop punctuates my growing frustration. How did I become the villain in a story where I'm the one who's been financially struggling? Thursday brings the final blow. My colleague Marcus approaches my desk during the afternoon coffee break, his expression pinched with concern. "Hey, I ran into your sister at the gym yesterday," he says, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "She mentioned something about a housing situation. If you need help finding resources for temporary accommodation, my church has a program that might help her." The carrot I've been eating turns to cardboard in my mouth. "What exactly did Rebecca tell you?" Marcus shifts uncomfortably, clearly realizing he's stepped into family drama. "Just that she's facing homelessness because of some sudden changes in her living situation. She seemed really distressed about it. Look, I don't want to get involved in family business, but if she needs help..." My jaw clenches so hard it sends pain shooting up to my temples. "Thanks for your concern, Marcus. But Rebecca isn't homeless. She has her own apartment and parents with a 4-bedroom house." After Marcus walks away looking confused, I lock myself in the bathroom stall and text Rebecca. "Stop telling people I'm making you homeless. It's a lie and you know it." Her response arrives within seconds. "You terminated your lease, knowing I was counting on staying with you. What else would you call it?" The audacity takes my breath away. Rebecca has rewritten history so completely that she might actually believe her own version. In her mind, my apartment was always partially hers, and my decision to leave is a betrayal rather than a personal choice about my own living situation. That night, I spread my financial documents across my kitchen table. Bank statements, rental agreements, medical bills from my recent asthma flare-ups caused by the mold in my bathroom. The complete picture of why staying in that apartment was no longer financially or physically sustainable for me. The rent increase notice from 3 months ago still makes me nauseous to look at. A 37% jump that pushed my housing costs from reasonable to suffocating. The building's new management company had systematically raised rents on all the longtime tenants, clearly trying to force out people like me who were paying below market rates. Then there were the medical expenses. 4 urgent care visits for asthma attacks triggered by the persistent mold problem that management refused to address. The prescription inhalers that weren't fully covered by my insurance. The air purifiers I'd bought in a desperate attempt to make the space livable. I'd tried everything before making the decision to leave. Requested reasonable accommodations for the mold remediation, denied. Applied for rental assistance programs, waitlisted indefinitely. Even looked into getting a roommate to split costs, but the lease prohibited additional occupants. The termination decision wasn't impulsive or spiteful, it was survival. But none of that matters now. The family narrative has been set in stone. Lily chose selfishness over family loyalty. The complexity of my situation has been reduced to a simple story of good sister versus bad sister. I document everything anyway, taking screenshots of the rent increase notice, photographing my medical bills, saving my correspondence with building management about the mold issues. A paper trail of truth against the avalanche of family fiction. While organizing these documents, I find a photo tucked between some old bank statements. It's from my apartment warming party 2 years ago. Me standing in my living room surrounded by friends, raising a champagne glass toward the camera. I remember that feeling of pure accomplishment. I'd found and secured that place entirely on my own, furnished it with pieces I'd saved for months to buy. Looking at that photo now, I remember what it felt like to have something that was completely mine. A space where I made the rules, where I could retreat and recharge. The apartment wasn't just housing. It was proof that I could build a life independent of my family's expectations and interventions. Maybe that's what really threatens them. Not the loss of a convenient place to park, Rebecca, but the evidence that I am capable of, existing separately from their system of obligations and dependencies. My phone buzzes with another text from an unknown number. "This is Jessica, Rebecca's friend from college. I heard about what you did to her. Family is supposed to support each other. You should be ashamed." I stare at the message, wondering how many strangers now know the twisted version of my story. How far has this campaign of character assassination spread? Instead of responding, I turn my phone face down and return to organizing my financial documents. Tomorrow, I have an appointment with a new apartment complex across town. A smaller place, but newer construction, with no mold problems and rent I can actually afford. For the first time in months, I'm not making decisions based on my family's needs or expectations. I'm choosing what's best for my health, my finances, and my peace of mind. Even if that makes me the family villain, at least I'll be a villain with clean air to breathe and money left over at the end of the month. Saturday afternoon, I'm wrapping my dishes in newspaper when the doorbell rings. Through the peephole, I see my parents' silver Honda in the driveway, with Rebecca's red Corolla parked behind it. No warning text, no courtesy call asking if this is a good time. They've just shown up, like they own the place. I consider not answering, but the knocking becomes more insistent. When I finally open the door, they file in like a delegation arriving for peace negotiations. Solemn expressions, determined postures, ready to manage what they clearly see as my temporary insanity. "Look at this mess," Mom says immediately, surveying my half-packed living room with obvious distress. "Lily, you're really going through with this madness." I fold another plate into newspaper, keeping my hands busy to maintain my composure. "The lease ends in 2 weeks. The moving truck comes Tuesday. Your sister needs you," Mom continues, her voice taking on that familiar guilt-inducing rhythm. "You've always been the responsible one. But this level of selfishness is beyond my understanding." Dad clears his throat, positioning himself near my bookshelf like he's preparing to deliver a closing argument. "Lily, be reasonable here. We're family." I stop wrapping dishes and look up at them. Something has shifted inside me during these past weeks of accusations and manipulation. The constant need for their approval that has driven most of my life decisions has quieted, replaced by something steadier and less desperate. "I need financial stability," I say calmly, continuing to pack. "I need to sleep at night without panic attacks about whether I can afford next month's rent. I need to breathe clean air without triggering asthma attacks from mold that management won't fix." The specificity of my response seems to catch them off guard. This isn't the vague "I need space" excuse they were probably expecting. "We're your family," Mom says, but her voice wavers slightly. "We've always been there for you." "Yes, you are my family," I agree, taping up a box of kitchen items. "And in 28 years, I've never once asked you for money. Not for college tuition, not for my security deposit on this place, not for the medical bills when I had pneumonia 2 years ago, and not for help when my rent increased by $400 a month." For once, they don't have an immediate response. Rebecca stares at her shoes. Dad suddenly finds my ceiling fascinating. I realize with startling clarity that I no longer need their approval to feel good about my decisions. The constant ache for validation that has shaped my choices since childhood has been replaced by something much more reliable, my own judgment about what's best for my life. When I stand to reach for another stack of plates, I notice my posture is different. Shoulders back, spine straight, meeting their eyes directly, instead of looking down like I usually do during family confrontations. The physical manifestation of an internal shift I didn't even realize was happening. "Here's what I don't understand," I continue, placing bubble wrap around a ceramic bowl. Rebecca is 26 years old with a college degree. She's perfectly capable of working full-time and supporting herself. But instead of encouraging her independence, you've created a system where she expects other people to solve her problems. Rebecca's head snaps up. That's not fair. You don't know how hard things have been for me. You're right. I acknowledge. I don't know the details of your struggles because you only call me when you need something. But I do know that every time Mom and Dad bail you out, they're preventing you from learning to handle difficulties on your own. Dad moves toward the window where my curtains are already down, leaving bare hardware visible. Lily, your sister needs support right now, not lectures. Actually, I say, walking to my desk and pulling out a folder. Let me show you what support versus enabling looks like. I open the folder and spread out several documents on my coffee table. Bank statements, apartment applications, employment verification forms. This is my application for a one-bedroom place in the Riverside district. The rent is $600 less than what I was paying here, which means I can rebuild my emergency savings and actually contribute to my retirement fund again. Mom picks up one of the papers, her forehead creasing as she studies the numbers. But this neighborhood isn't as nice, and it's further from your job. It's also safe, clean, and affordable, I reply. And sometimes making practical choices means sacrificing luxury for financial stability. I pull out another document. This is contact information for the marketing firm where I work. They have an entry-level position opening next Monday. Rebecca, if you're serious about getting back on your feet, you could interview for it Tuesday. Rebecca stares at the paper like I've handed her a snake. I don't need your charity job. It's not charity, I say firmly. It's an opportunity to earn your own money and build work experience. What you do with that opportunity is entirely up to you. Dad stands abruptly, clearly frustrated that this conversation isn't going according to their plan. Eden, you're being unreasonable. Family helps family, period. End of discussion. You're right about family helping family, I agree. But there's a difference between helping someone through a temporary crisis and creating permanent dependence. When you pay Rebecca's rent, month after month, when you make her car payments, when you cover her credit card bills, you're not helping her become self-sufficient. You're teaching her that she doesn't have to be. I gather the job information back into my folder. The best help I can give Rebecca is showing her that it's possible to live within your means and handle your own responsibilities. I've been doing it for years. The room falls quiet, except for the sound of packing tape being pulled from its roll. Finally, Rebecca breaks the silence. So this is really about me, she says, tears starting to form. You're punishing me because Mom and Dad help me sometimes. This isn't about punishment, I reply, my voice gentler now. This is about all of us learning healthier patterns. I'm not responsible for solving your housing problems, just like you're not responsible for managing my financial decisions. Mom sits down heavily on my couch, looking suddenly older. We just wanted to help her, she whispers. I know, I say, but enabling someone isn't the same as helping them. And expecting me to continue that pattern isn't fair to anyone. I hand Rebecca the job information one more time. The interview would be Tuesday at 10 a.m. The starting salary is $32,000, which is enough to rent a decent one-bedroom apartment in this city. This time, she takes the paper. I'll think about it, she says quietly. After they leave, I continue packing in the silence they've left behind. The apartment feels different now. Not empty, but spacious. Open with possibility, rather than weighted down by expectations I never chose to carry. Tomorrow, I sign the lease on my new place. It's smaller and simpler, but it's entirely mine. And for the first time in years, that feels like enough. 3 months later, I'm standing in my new living room, morning sunlight streaming through windows that actually open properly. The Riverside apartment is smaller than my old place, but it feels twice as spacious without the weight of family expectations pressing down on me. Fresh paint on the walls, no mold anywhere, and rent that leaves me with enough money to breathe freely at the end of each month. I update my budget app, marking another month where I've stayed comfortably within my means. The green numbers on my screen represent something I hadn't experienced in over a year: financial stability without anxiety. My emergency fund is slowly rebuilding, and for the first time since college, I've been able to contribute to my retirement account. My phone buzzes with a calendar reminder: Sunday dinner at Mom and Dad's. I feel that familiar tightening in my shoulders, then consciously release it. These family dinners have evolved just as I have. Later that afternoon, I arrive at my parents' house carrying a bottle of wine instead of the knot of dread I used to bring. Mom greets me at the door with a hug that feels genuine rather than obligatory. "Lily, come see what Rebecca made for dessert," she says, her voice carrying none of the comparative undertones that used to punctuate our interactions. There's no "your sister" emphasis, no subtle suggestions that I should be more like her, or that she should be more like me. In the dining room, Rebecca is arranging fresh flowers in a vase. She looks up when I enter, her smile reaching her eyes in a way I haven't seen in years. "I got my first performance review this week," she says, pulling a folded paper from her pocket. "Exceeded expectations in 3 out of 5 categories." She hands me the review without the defensive edge that used to color her accomplishments. I read through the feedback from her supervisor at the marketing firm. Praise for her creative input on social media campaigns, recognition of her improving time management, constructive notes for continued growth. "This is really impressive, Rebecca," I tell her and mean it. "How are you liking the work?" "It's challenging," she admits, "but in a good way. I never realized how much I was capable of when I actually had to figure things out myself." Mom appears in the doorway carrying a casserole that isn't strategically positioned to favor anyone's place setting. "Tell us about that photography class you mentioned last week," she says to me, then turns to Rebecca. "And I want to hear more about that client presentation you're preparing." I blink, still adjusting to this new reality where both daughters receive equal attention and genuine interest. As we eat, I notice Dad asking thoughtful questions of both of us, engaging with our answers instead of just waiting for his turn to offer advice or correction. The following Saturday, Dorothy comes over to help me hang artwork in my bedroom. We're sharing a bottle of wine and laughing about her latest dating adventure when she raises her glass in a toast. "To apartments that shelter us and boundaries that protect us," she says with a grin. "To learning the difference between helping and enabling," I add, clinking my glass against hers. She hands me a framed photo she's had made, 2 pictures side by side. On the left, me signing the lease for my old apartment 3 years ago. Excited but nervous. On the right, me holding the keys to this place, smiling with a confidence I didn't know I possessed. 2 different chapters, Dorothy says softly. 2 different women. "The same woman," I correct her. "Just one who finally learned to prioritize her own well-being." The next weekend brings something I never expected. Rebecca knocking on my door with a laptop bag and a nervous expression. "I was hoping you could help me look at apartment listings," she says. "My lease is up in 2 months, and I think I'm ready to find a place on my own. No roommates, no backup plans, just me." We sit at my kitchen table, scrolling through rental websites and calculating budgets. Rebecca has a spreadsheet open, tracking her income and expenses with a precision that surprises me. "If I keep my entertainment budget under $200 a month and cook at home more often, I can afford this 1 bedroom in the Arts District," she says, pointing to a listing. "It's not fancy, but it has good natural light and it's close to the bus line." I watch her run the numbers again, double-checking her math with the same careful attention I use for my own financial planning. This is the sister I always knew was there, buried under years of learned helplessness. "What changed?" I ask her. "I mean, what made you decide you wanted to do this independently?" She's quiet for a moment, scrolling through photos of potential apartments. "Remember that night when you showed us all your financial documents? When you proved that leaving your old place wasn't about spite, but about necessity?" I nod. I realized I'd never had to prove anything like that, because I'd never been solely responsible for my own survival. I was 26 years old and I'd never experienced the satisfaction of solving my own problems. She looks up from the laptop. I didn't even know what I was capable of because no one had ever required me to find out. Our parents arrive later that afternoon, ostensibly to drop off Rebecca's forgotten sweater but really to check on this unusual sister bonding session. They find us surrounded by rental listings, budget calculations, and apartment comparison charts. "What's all this?" Mom asks, settling into my living room chair. "Rebecca's moving into her own place," I explain. "We're helping her plan the transition." Dad picks up one of the budget spreadsheets, his eyebrows rising as he studies the detailed calculations. This is very thorough financial planning, he says, and for once his tone carries pride instead of concern. I never realized how much I didn't know about managing money, Rebecca admits. Having someone else handle the hard parts meant I never learned to handle them myself. Mom's eyes glisten with something between pride and regret. We thought we were protecting you from stress. I know, Rebecca says gently. But protection and preparation are different things. Lily figured that out years ago. I'm just catching up. As my parents leaf through Rebecca's apartment research and budget plans, I'm struck by how different this feels from our family interactions just a few months ago. Instead of crisis management and guilt distribution, we're engaged in actual problem solving. Instead of one daughter being responsible while the other is rescued, we're both taking charge of our individual lives. That evening, after everyone has left, I sit in my living room with a cup of tea, reviewing the day. 6 months ago, I was drowning in rent I couldn't afford, breathing moldy air that triggered constant health problems, and enabling a family dynamic that served no one well. Tonight, I'm in a home I can afford, with clean air in my lungs and an emergency fund that grows a little each month. My sister is learning to manage her own life instead of expecting others to manage it for her. My parents are learning the difference between love and enablement. The hardest part about setting boundaries with family isn't the initial confrontation. It's maintaining them consistently until new patterns replace the old ones. It's refusing to go back to familiar dysfunction just because growth feels uncomfortable. But sitting here in my quiet, affordable apartment, breathing easily, and sleeping peacefully, I know I made the right choice. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to participate in the dynamics that keep everyone stuck. Tomorrow, Rebecca starts apartment hunting in earnest. Next month, I'm signing up for a pottery class I've wanted to take for years but never felt I could afford. Small steps toward the lives we actually want, instead of the roles we thought we had to play. It turns out that disappointing your family's expectations can be the first step toward exceeding your own. 6 months later, I'm standing in Rebecca's new apartment, helping her hang curtains in her very first place that's entirely her own. The one bedroom in the Arts District isn't fancy, but it's clean, affordable, and completely hers. Sunlight streams through windows that she chose, illuminating furniture she saved up for and bought herself. I can't believe I was so terrified of this, she says, stepping back to admire our handiwork. Living alone, paying my own bills, making my own decisions. It's actually liberating. I hand her another curtain rod bracket, smiling at the wonder in her voice. Scary at first, but liberating is exactly the right word. She's been in this place for 2 months now, and the transformation in her confidence is remarkable. Her job at the marketing firm has become more than just a paycheck. She's genuinely good at it, and has been promoted to junior account coordinator. More importantly, she's discovered that she enjoys the challenge of solving problems rather than having others solve them for her. Remember when you thought I was being cruel for not letting you move in with me? I ask, adjusting the curtains to hang evenly. Rebecca laughs, but it's not bitter. I thought you were the most selfish person in the world. I couldn't understand why you'd choose your own comfort over family obligation. She pauses, looking around her apartment with obvious pride. I didn't realize you were actually choosing growth over stagnation. For both of us. My phone buzzes with a text from Mom. Don't forget, dinner at 6 p.m. tonight. Dorothy is joining us, and your father is making his famous lasagna. These family dinners have become something I actually look forward to rather than endure. The dynamics have shifted so completely that sometimes I forget how toxic they used to be. Later that evening, we're all gathered around my parents' dining table, but this time, the formal china stays in the cabinet. This is just regular Sunday dinner with people who've learned to enjoy each other's company without manipulation or guilt. So Rebecca got another client compliment this week, Dad says, passing the salad bowl, and Lily's photography is getting noticed at that gallery downtown. It's just a small display, I say, but I'm smiling. The pottery class led to photography, which led to discovering I have an actual talent for capturing urban landscapes. 3 of my pieces are hanging in a local cafe's rotating artist showcase. Small beginnings can lead to big things, Dorothy adds, raising her wine glass. I'm proud of both of you for building lives that actually fit who you are instead of who you thought you had to be. Rebecca nods, twirling pasta around her fork. I never understood the difference before. I thought family meant everyone sacrificing for everyone else in this endless cycle. But that's not love. That's just organized dysfunction. Mom sets down her fork, looking thoughtful. We owe both of you an apology. We thought we were showing love by managing Rebecca's problems and expecting Lily to accommodate whatever the family needed. We created a system where no one could really succeed. Rebecca couldn't learn independence because we kept rescuing her, Dad adds. And Lily couldn't have boundaries because we kept expecting her to be the solution to everyone else's problems. It's the closest thing to a genuine apology I've ever received from my parents. Not perfect, but real acknowledgement of the patterns that hurt all of us. The important thing is that we all learned, I say, and we're doing better now. After dinner, Rebecca and I are washing dishes while our parents and Dorothy play cards in the living room. The normalcy of it strikes me. 2 sisters, sharing chores, talking about work and weekend plans, no underlying tension or resentment. Can I tell you something? Rebecca asks, drying a wine glass carefully. When you first terminated your lease, I was so angry I fantasized about never speaking to you again. I remember, I say with a rueful laugh. You made that pretty clear. But now I realize that if you just let me move in, I'd probably still be there. Still dependent. Still making excuses. Still expecting someone else to handle the hard parts of adult life. She sets the glass in the cabinet with obvious satisfaction. You forced me to grow up, and it turns out I actually like the person I am when I'm taking care of myself. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence, then joined the card game in the living room. Watching my family interact with genuine affection, instead of obligatory duty, feels like witnessing a small miracle. Later that night, I'm back in my own apartment, sitting on my couch with a cup of tea in my laptop, editing photos from yesterday's walk through downtown. The image I'm working on captures the late afternoon light hitting the brick walls of the old textile district, golden and warm and full of possibility. I think about where I was a year ago, financially stressed, physically unhealthy from the mold, emotionally drained from constantly managing family drama. I was living in a space I couldn't afford, enabling dynamics that helped no one, and sacrificing my own well-being to maintain a version of family harmony that was really just organized chaos. Tonight, I'm in a home I love and can afford, surrounded by art supplies and evidence of hobbies I actually have time and money to pursue. My sister is thriving in her own space, learning skills she never thought she needed. My parents have discovered that they can show love without creating dependence. Even our family dinners have become genuine gatherings instead of crisis management sessions. The hardest lesson in all of this wasn't about setting boundaries or managing money or even standing up to family pressure. It was learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in patterns that keep everyone stuck, even when that refusal is initially seen as betrayal. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Hi, this is Sarah from the coffee shop where your photos are displayed. A customer wants to know if you do commissioned work. Are you interested? I stare at the message, hardly believing it. My photography, something that started as a stress relief hobby after moving to this apartment, might actually become a source of income. I text back, yes, I'd be very interested. When would be a good time to discuss details? As I hit send, I realize this moment perfectly captures what my life has become. Instead of reacting to other people's crises and expectations, I'm responding to opportunities I've created through my own choices and growth. A year ago, I thought setting boundaries with my family would mean losing them. Instead, it meant all of us finding healthier versions of ourselves. Rebecca discovered her capability and independence. My parents learned to express love without creating dependence. And I learned that protecting my own well-being isn't selfish. It's the foundation that allows me to show up as my best self for the people I care about. The apartment is quiet, except for the gentle hum of the efficient heating system and the distant sound of neighbors coming home from their Saturday night out. No mold, no financial anxiety, no family drama requiring my immediate intervention. Just peaceful space to live my own life on my own terms. I close my laptop and head toward bed, passing the framed photo Dorothy gave me months ago. The before and after shots of me signing apartment leases. Two different moments, but the same woman learning to trust her own judgment about what she needs to thrive. Tomorrow, Rebecca and I are going furniture shopping for her bedroom. She's saved enough to replace the air mattress she's been sleeping on with an actual bed she's chosen herself. It's a small milestone, but it represents something huge. The satisfaction of meeting your own needs through your own efforts. As I turn off the lights, I think about that terrifying night when I announced my lease termination to a room full of outraged family members. I had no idea if I was making the right choice or if I'd destroyed my relationships forever. All I knew was that I couldn't continue living in a way that was slowly destroying my health and finances. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust your own judgment, even when everyone you love thinks you're making a mistake. Sometimes setting a boundary that looks like rejection is actually an invitation for everyone to grow into better versions of themselves. And sometimes, disappointing your family's expectations is the first step toward building the life you actually want to live. In the end, that's exactly what happened. We're all better for it, even if getting here was harder than anyone expected. Especially me.